They have a name for me. Peacemaker. It's a clean, sterile word for a job that's anything but. I don't create peace. I contain violence. I negotiate with it, divert it, and when all other options are exhausted, I apply it with a surgeon's precision. For 2 decades, I've operated from quiet rooms under the drone of artificial lighting, treating the world as a grand chessboard, all to prevent the delicate post-war truce from shattering. I am the man who sees the hurricane on the horizon and erects the seawall. But the only real peace I've ever managed to construct is within my own home, and that too is a fragile treaty, renegotiated daily with the one person who has always seen past the wall. My wife, Esther.
We met long before the world fractured, when Julian's battlegrounds were university debate halls and my heart broke only for characters in novels. I am his opposite. Where he sees probabilities and acceptable casualties, I see a child's face, a family's grief. I am the compass he uses to remember that the lines on his maps are roads and rivers, not just vectors of influence. He, in turn, is my anchor. He keeps the sheer volume of the world's suffering, which I feel so acutely, from pulling me under. For years, I believed our paradox, his logic, my love, was an unbreakable shield. But the career he built to protect me was born from an act that almost destroyed us. It was Silas Ammon. He was a politician, charismatic and popular, standing in the way of a defense initiative Julian was certain would save lives. Julian didn't debate his policies, he unmade the man. He found a small, private failing and weaponized it, broadcasting it until Ammon's name was poison. The initiative passed. Julian's career was made. Months later, his life, now a spiral of debt and divorce, ended when his car went into a ravine. It was officially an accident, but we knew. We saw the chaos Julian had authored. That night, I looked at the man I loved, my heart aching not with anger, but with a deep, cavernous sorrow, and asked, "Was it worth it, Julian?" He never answered, but that question became the ghost that has haunted our home ever since. It became the principle he lived by. He would make the ugly choices so I could live in a world where they weren't necessary. Now, a new variable has appeared on the board, one my models cannot account for: the peace takers. My briefings are filled with their symbol, a circle bisected by a single line, the null set, a void. It's a brand they burn into the foreheads of their followers. They are not an army. They wear simple gray robes and carry no weapons. They move through cities like specters, their faces serene as they orchestrate atrocities. Their weapon is the human soul. They find a person's deepest trauma, their most secret shame, and build a stage around it, a perfectly engineered moral crisis. They push their victim to commit an unspeakable act, all while believing it is the only path to protect something they cherish. They don't force. They whisper. They create the illusion of choice, then watch the spirit rot from within. Their philosophy is a monstrous inversion of my own. That true peace can only be valued once it's taken from you, and it can only be protected if you are willing to take it from another. It terrifies me, because their battlefield is not a place I can map. It is the human heart, the one territory Esther has always called home.
The first move they made against me was the Abernathy case. General Abernathy was a friend, a man as solid and reliable as the granite of his beloved home. One morning, he walked into the Central Command Center and calmly, deliberately, erased 3 weeks of vital surveillance data, an act of treason so complete it was almost art. When the MPs found him, he was pruning a bonsai tree in his office, humming opera. He told them, "The roses are safe now. That's all that matters." His wife was unharmed, visiting her sister. There had been no threat. In the interrogation room, he was unnervingly calm. When I demanded to know why, he just smiled gently. "You have to be willing to prune the bush, Julian," he said. Sometimes you have to cut away the healthy branches to save the root. The only physical evidence was a single, perfect white rose left on the server he'd wiped. Our botanist said it was impossible. It was 3 months out of season for this entire hemisphere. As I stared at the photograph of that impossible flower, a cold dread began to form in my gut. This wasn't war. It was a message. That night, the Abernathy file open on my desk, my mind kept returning to Silas Ammon. I had cut away a branch to save the tree. The chilling echo of Abernathy's words made it clear. This wasn't just an attack on my country. It was an attack on my soul.
After the Abernathy incident, the ghost in our house grew bolder. Julian stopped sleeping. He would sit in his study all night, the door locked, the silence on the other side heavier than any argument we'd ever had. He was a fortress, and for the first time, I felt I was on the outside of the walls. A week later, while he was locked in that study, I was arranging flowers on the hall table. Sunflowers. I always bought them on Mondays. I turned to get more water from the kitchen, and when I came back, it was there. Sitting amongst the bright yellow heads of the sunflowers was a single, stark white rose. It was perfect, almost unreal, with a single drop of dew clinging to a petal as if the air in our climate-controlled home had wept on it. I hadn't bought it. It wasn't there a moment ago. A coldness I had never felt before washed over me. I called out to Julian. He burst from his study, saw the rose, and the look on his face was not one I recognized. It was primal fear. He didn't touch the flower. He just stared, then looked at me, his eyes searching my face for an explanation I didn't have. That night, his security team arrived. They swept the house for hours, their silent, methodical search a violation far deeper than any intruder. They found nothing.
I told no one what I saw on the security feed a moment before Esther found the rose. A flicker, a heat haze distortion, and in it, the face of Silas Ammon, gaunt and screaming in silence. It had to be a psychological attack, a targeted technological assault designed to make me question my own mind. That was the only logical conclusion. I channeled my fear into work, focusing with a cold fury on the upcoming Geneva Peace Summit. I convinced myself that this was their endgame, to destabilize me, to shatter my focus before the most critical diplomatic talks in a decade. If I could secure the treaty, I could then turn all my resources on these phantoms. My denial was a fortress built over the memory of that impossible flower and that ghostly face. The summit was my proving ground.
I went with him. He needed me, though he would never say it. I was his anchor, and he was drifting in a storm I could not see. The summit was held in a fortress of glass and steel. On the second day, as Julian was on the verge of securing his treaty, the world went black. Not just the lights, the power, the emergency generators, everything. A thick, suffocating darkness fell. Julian's hand found my arm, then a low, melodic humming began to vibrate through the floor, through my bones. Whispers slittered out of the air around us. Is she worth it, Julian? My blood ran cold. A soft gray light bloomed down the hall, and in it, I saw them. Figures in gray robes moving with a chilling serenity. Our guards, elite soldiers, stood frozen, their rifles lowered, their faces slack-jawed with a strange, placid confusion. One of the figures turned, its eyes meeting mine. They were completely empty. On its forehead was the branded circle, the void. It raised a hand, not in threat, but like a priest offering a blessing. I felt a sharp sting in my neck. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was Julian's face, contorted in terror, his mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear, as a gray-robed figure gently placed a hand over my eyes.
I woke to the hum of a failing light and the taste of metal. I was in a featureless gray cell, a bunker built to survive the end of the world. Esther? My voice with a dead sound in the oppressive quiet. A chime echoed, and a wall slid open. She was in an identical room, her back to me. Before her stood a man in gray robes, the null set branded on his forehead. He was looking at me. "She is unharmed," he said, his voice flat, human. "We are not savages, Julian. We are educators. You are the logician, she is the empath, the perfect candidates to understand the true price of peace, to become its protectors." He stepped aside, revealing a steel table. On it was a high-energy particle pistol, a prototype from my own R&D, a weapon that could erase a person from existence. The peacetaker said, "Its trial is simple. Only one of you is needed to carry the lesson forward. Only one of you can leave. The choice is yours."
Everything inside me went quiet and cold, the way it always did when the stakes were highest. My mind wasn't a place of feeling anymore. It was a schematic. Fear, love, despair, they were just variables to be isolated and discarded, liabilities. I saw the trap for what it was, a classic prisoner's dilemma, engineered for maximum psychological devastation. They weren't just trying to kill one of us. They were trying to prove their monstrous point, that to protect peace, you must be willing to obliterate it. If I refused to play, they would kill us both. If Esther acted, they would kill us both. Every path but one ended in absolute loss. The only logical choice, the only tactical move that left one of us standing was to take the weapon. It was the brutal, final expression of the principle I had built my life on. You cut away a healthy branch to save the root. I would survive. I would carry this, and I would use the power I had to hunt these people down and burn them from the earth. A necessary sacrifice. My legs were moving before the thought was even complete, carrying me across the cold steel floor and into her room. She watched me come, and I saw the terror in her eyes curdle into a heartbreaking understanding. She knew me. She knew exactly how this machine in my head worked. A logical choice, the peacetaker murmured, his voice a drop of poison in the silence. I picked up the weapon. It felt cold and heavy in my hand, an extension of the room's sterile logic. I raised it, my grip unwavering, and aimed it directly at her heart.
He raised the weapon, and I did not see a monster. I saw the boy I met in the library, the man who held me when my mother died, the husband who built a fortress to keep me safe and had now become its prisoner. I did not fear for my life. I feared for his soul. In his eyes, I saw the cold calculus, the machine grinding towards its terrible conclusion. But beneath it, I saw him drowning. The peacetaker watched us, a scientist observing his successful experiment. Julian's finger tightened on the trigger. He was about to complete the equation, to save the world by destroying his own world. He was about to become them. So I spoke, not to plead, but to offer the only truth that could counter his logic. I will always love you, Julian. It was a statement of fact, a constant in his variable world. It was the answer to the question I had asked him all those years ago. It was worth it. All of it. He was worth it.
4 words, a truth that shattered my fortress. Their victory wasn't my survival. It was my transformation into a man who could kill his own heart for a greater good that would taste like ash. My life's work wasn't making hard choices. It was protecting the one person who reminded me why those choices mattered. The logic didn't break. It simply arrived at a new, undeniable conclusion. A world without her was a world not worth protecting. My arm began to shake. I looked from Esther's sorrowful, loving face to the peacetaker's empty eyes. He was already turning away, his experiment complete. But he had miscalculated. I turned the weapon. The barrel was cold against my temple. I looked at Esther, my anchor, my compass, my wife, one last time. "I know," I whispered. Then I pulled the trigger. There was only a silent white light, and in it, a profound and final peace.
They found me 3 days later, sitting on the floor, cradling Julian's body in the silent gray room. The woman they let out into the sunlight was a ghost of the person who had entered the bunker. The boundless empathy that had been my compass and Julian's anchor was gone. It had been burned away in the flash of the weapon, leaving a cold, hollow space. In its place, something new and terrible grew, a hard, sharp-edged logic that was his. I had absorbed his mind. I saw the world as he had, a series of problems to be solved, of acceptable losses and strategic objectives. I took control of his networks, his power, his armies. I did not hunt the peace takers. In my new, cold clarity, I understood their premise. Instead, I turned my gaze upon the world they had tried to educate. Any nation that spoke of peace, any movement that preached compassion, I saw as a vulnerability, a weakness to be excised before it could be exploited. I began to wage a relentless war to protect humanity from its own heart. The peace takers, in their failure to corrupt Julian, had achieved their ultimate success. They had created me. I, who was once the living idea of peace, have become its greatest enemy, destined to forever destroy it in order to save it. Paying a price I no longer have the heart to understand.
There are more scares to share. Press the like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single terrifying moment. You're helping me investigate the deepest, darkest corners to bring you stories that haunt your dreams.